The senator from Oklahoma.
I ask unanimous consent that I be recorded as a co-sponsor on the Grassley Amendment number 720. It's been an interesting 3 or 4 weeks as we've considered and talked and thought about how do we address what is best for our country, and how do we do that in a way that we protect the Constitution and we protect individual rights and we protect many of them with great infirmities in terms of either impacting Second Amendment right, impacting 10th Amendment right, or the infirmity of all is that they actually won't do anything to actually solve the problem of weapons. I know how to handle them. I know how to fire them. Safety. The issue in front of us is how do we rulings that have affirmed our individual right to self-defense and our individual right for freedom. And I believe I actually have an answer that the Senate now. You know, avid gun owners in Oklahoma, many who are opposing me trying to reach a compromise. The one question that they agree with me on is if you could know as a gun owner or whoever you are, if you have a gun and you're going to sell, if you could know that you were not selling that gun to somebody on the do not buy list. You see, we've got all these words going on right now. Background check. There's no background check with the NICS list. It's a check against people who are prohibited, haven't complied with people convicted of felony. We have a lot of problems in terms of the do not buy list. So you actually need to think of this list as kind of like our do not fly list that Homeland Security has. None of us want to get on an airplane with somebody that's on that do not fly list because they're on that do not fly list for a very good reason. And most gun owners, matter of fact, I haven't met one yet, that wants to sell a gun to somebody that's on a do not buy list, which is called the NICS list. So how do we do that? And how do we do that where we don't raise the cost, limit the freedom, or otherwise impede a free activity that's available, guaranteed under our Constitution? And the other thing I've learned is the easier laws are to comply with, the more compliance you'll get. So my proposal is very simple and straightforward. Let's create a way so that whoever's selling a gun in this country can know that they're not selling it to a criminal, they're not selling it to somebody who's prohibited, which is an illegal alien, a child sex abuser, a felon. Those people who are actually, how do you know? And can we do that in a way that doesn't inhibit commerce, doesn't inhibit the rights of you as an individual under the Second Amendment, doesn't inhibit the rights of a state under the 10th Amendment? How do we do responsibilities? And if I could on your cell phone or print it out on your print, that whoever could be selling you a gun would say, I'm going to check your PIN number to see this is not bogus, and now show me your ID, and you could actually confirm whether somebody was on or not on the list. That's how we control it. We make it easy. We don't put large hurdles. And you know, I find myself caught between both extremes in this debate. I actually think it's smart policy to make sure we put in place something that allows law-abiding citizens to do the right, to actually make a difference. And if we were to do that, a large percent, not all of it, of the transfers of weapons and guns to people who shouldn't have them would stop. Now, the emotion associated with all the violent events of the last 3 or 4 years tends to cause us to lose sight of some pretty common sense principles. We're not going to stop all gun violence in this country. People who are going to do illegal things are still going to do them. We can't stop it all. But we can do straightforward, simple things that can make a big difference in lessening the availability of weapons to people who shouldn't have them. The other thing we can do is we can make it so that a veteran doesn't automatically lose their Second Amendment right because for a short period of time, due to their service, they were incapable of managing their financial affairs. That's the right thing to do. And so we can do that. So that's in this proposal. But what I fear is going to happen is nothing. And so what we're going to be offering when there's a time to allow other amendments is my amendment 727, which does the following things. It reauthorizes as an appropriate level the no-buy list. It creates reforms to the grant system so that states will comply with reporting those people who are dangerous to themselves or somebody else. So we incentivize states to do that. We create a protection for these Second Amendment rights of veterans. We require the courts to submit to the no-buy list those that are convicted of felonies, violent felonies. We require some transparency in state reporting so you can know whether or not your state is actually complying by reporting those that are a danger to themselves and other people, those that are truly mentally infirm. Because one of our big problems, if you take Virginia Tech, the individual who committed that crime was known by the state to be of a danger to themselves or somebody else, but yet they didn't report it to the do not buy list. So we incentivize that. We allow for exceptions for people who are already authorized in their state to purchase guns, whether it be a concealed carry permit or what the state may say is, here's your authorization to say you're not on it. In other words, we give states primacy, protecting the 10th Amendment. Whether they want to go further, they can. But we also allow them to innovate, which is one of the things our forefathers wanted us to make sure we did when we did things in Washington. We create a consumer portal that is easy. We also create penalties if you misuse that portal for some other purpose. We enforce a destruction of those records into that portal so that the government cannot use that as a list to know who is purchasing guns. So we eliminate the concern over record keeping and its assault on the Second Amendment. We also sunset this so that if it actually doesn't make a marked improvement, which I think it will, in 5 years it goes away and we do something different. The other thing is we limit the ATF's ability to grossly violate the intent of previous laws in terms of demand letters on federally licensed firearm dealers. I dare say there is a difference in culture on guns in this country depending on where in the country you are. But there is a place to be found in the middle, in the Senate, for doing something that's common sense. And what we're proposing is something that's simple. It doesn't cost any money to speak of. It's easily accessible. It's verifiable on both ends of a commercial transaction. It does nothing to eliminate the Second Amendment provisions in the Constitution or take away 10th Amendment rights of states. And it'll actually decrease transfers of weapons to those who are on the do not buy list. Is it a comprehensive plan? No. Will it solve the problem? Yes. Will it work? Yes. Some of the criticisms we heard, well, if there's no record, how do you know they did it? Well, if 90% of the people in this country, which is what the media all is quoting, want us to do that, 90% of us think there ought to be an enhancement to the no-buy list in terms of utilizing it. That same 90% of the people are the gun owners in America. So if 90% is the number, then you're going to have at least 90% compliance with this very simple, straightforward way so you can know you're complying with the law. So the other area that's confusing that people want and why they want a record of a gun is for the investigation of a crime. Well, guess what? The best way to not ever have that crime is to have an effective check on the do not buy list. Now, it won't eliminate all crime. But they say the infirmity with R is that you can't trace the weapon. That's right, you can't. But the vast majority of weapons, used weapons, aren't sold through gun dealers today. They're not sold at gun shows. They're sold by average everyday Americans to somebody else. So if we don't want the straw purchasers buying them, if we don't want the felons buying them, if we don't want illegal citizens buying them, then what we ought to do is set up something that 90% of America is going to comply with. It's not hard to do. It's easy to do. It's easy to do the right thing. It doesn't please the gun control groups, and it doesn't please the hard Second Amendment right groups. But if you get down and think about it, if you were actually to make it easy to know you could not sell a gun to somebody on the do not buy list, America would comply. And we'd actually see a positive outcome over this debate. You know, I'm amazed at the misinformation that people have about guns when they come to the Senate floor and talk about them when they've never fired some of those weapons, haven't ever held them in their hands, don't know what they're designed for. And I'll end with this component. I plan to come back tomorrow as I get to bring up this amendment for consideration. Our founders had a Bill of Rights, and we had a Constitution. And it was really designed for moral and good people. But in that Bill of Rights, as affirmed by the Supreme Court, was a Second Amendment right. That isn't going away. That right isn't going to go away. Because even if we were to take it away, the Supreme Court would probably bring it back. So we really ought to be talking about and leading about what the real problems are in our country. What are the real problems? Is that we're not a moral and great people anymore as compared to what we were when our founding documents were founded. We are in some moral decline. And that's because of an absence of real leadership at a lot of levels in a lot of areas in our country. And we ought to recognize that we can't legislate away the evil that's about us. We can't fix it all with a law. We fix it in the way we live our lives, in the way we treat one another, how we reach out to give our life away to somebody else every day. And that's one of the crucial things that as we have become self-focused as Americans rather than nation-focused and other-focused, that we've seen this moral decline come upon us. And what I think our country is looking for is real leadership on the principles that really matter, that change people's mind about what they do and how they do it. And so we're really into a much larger debate than guns. That evil's out there. That criminal element is out there. That mental illness is out there. We're not going to address all that with a few laws on guns. We're going to address that by character-based, morally led, morally affirmed leadership at all levels throughout our country. As a physician, I'm trained to fix the real disease, not treat the symptoms. This debate is about symptoms. It's an important debate. There are things we can do. But the real disease is our moral decline as a country. And the historians talk about it. John Tyler, the Scottish historian, talked about the decline of all republics and what happens to them. America is built for a good and moral people. We have to have the leadership that calls us back to that. Madam President, I yield the floor and note the absence of the quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.